All right, we got some fun troop changes to talk about with 1.7.2 in Bannerlord. So the way we're going to do this video is we're going to first talk about all of the changes that have occurred across all of the kingdoms. Then at the end of this video, I'm going to quickly go through each of the kingdoms now overall unit list and quickly review it. This won't be the level of in-depth review that I've done before. I'll wait and do their own respective videos, but just to kind of give you an idea of how these troops perform in 1.7.2. I don't know why I'm saying point and dot in the same thing, but I'm just going to stick with it. So with 1.7.2, we get all of these fun troop changes that we're about to go in through, but we also get some changes to some minor factions as well as the bandits and an overall change to the way that the bolts work. So the bolts as in the projectiles shot by a crossbow. They now all do piercing damage, which is good because it makes them have a little bit more bang for their buck. So we're going to start off with Battania and then go all the way through to Vlandian, and then we'll have a miscellaneous section that'll do the minor factions, bandits, and any other kind of stuff outside of that. So let's get started here on these troop changes. So opening us up with Battania, we get a lot of buffs here. So for the Battanian clan warrior, they're going to have their arm bracers swapped off with some swapped leather bracers with 5 armor. The Battanian woodrunner gets a lot of things kind of moved around here. So they get a Highland tartan, which is one of the new body parts added. And one thing to kind of take a look at here is Highland tartans, Highland long tartans, tartan togas, kilt over tartan trousers. All these things are chest and leg pieces, and you also have arm pieces, all that kind of stuff. And you can see removed a chest piece and an arm piece. So what they've done is they are either removing things from the variations of units or making it so units only have 1 or 2 variations, whatever it is. So you can see in this situation, we're getting like 3 different types of chest pieces put into the single chest piece that they had before. So if you're looking at this and reading it and going, well, that's 3 different chest pieces, how does this work? It's saying that there's 3 different versions of the unit, and it might have the Highland tartan, it might have the Highland long tartan, it might have the tartan togas, it might even have a kilt over tartan trousers. Who knows what it is? So if you're confused, that is how that all works. But overall, the village leather tunic is very solid, but the tartan variations are quite nice. I think as far as aesthetic goes, they really fit into it as well. And you're going to be getting access to an iron round shield to all woodrunners, which is quite nice. They do no longer have head armor though, so they're going to be a little bit more susceptible to any kind of headshots. For the Battanian veteran Falksmen, they got a little bit of a buff here. They are losing the scale warlord armor, which has 37 body, getting the kilt over plated leather, which gives them 42 body. More leg armor as well, but they are going to substantially lose arm defense. And the way armor works, of course, is aggregate across all of the pieces that you've got. But if any specific piece hits, say like the arms, you're taking a look at any piece of armor that has armor on it. So if you look at this, it's got 3 arm armor. Sometimes you'll have a shoulder piece that would also give some arm armor. All those things are going to aggregate against the damage hit to that location. So you can see again, they get a little bit better of a body and leg defense, but a little bit of a sacrifice in the arm, and I'm okay with that. For the Battanian wildling, we are going to be losing their fur boots, but get some nice scaled boots, which are quite nice, very strong, very, very good indeed. And then for our noble line for Battania, the Battanian Fian gets a little bit weaker here. So they're removing the heavy mail vest, which is quite nice, right? 28 body, 8 leg, 2 arm. And they're gaining the 31 body, 6 leg, 3 arm Highland scale armor. All very solid, very good. But then as you kind of move through this, you see that a lot of this has changed. So their Highland reinforced mail over tartan, they're losing. The reinforced mail body armor, they're losing. They're losing all these variations and just simply getting this one. So there's only one chest piece that you'll see on your Fian. The armored bearskin is different here than the rough bearskin because you're losing 4 body, or using 4 arm armor. And then the warlord helmet with feathers, they're losing it and only getting the these 2 instead. So you're losing overall at the very minimum 5 head armor, and then you lose an additional what is that, like that's another 8 armor if you're going with the decorated steel cap with cheek guards. So a lot of this kind of seems to be swapping out newer armor or armor that is intended for Battanians that they've just recently created to kind of make it more present in the game. For the Fian champion, I don't know why I put this in green. If you can't tell, if it's green, it's been buffed. If it's red, it's been nerfed. If it's cyan, it's like whatever. But oh yeah, I don't know why. Because they get the rough bear skin, so they get 4 armor now for the Fian champion on their bear skins. Also, the Battanian nobles added to the civilian equipment, simple cape. So that is what it is. Moving into Sturgia here. We get an overall buff to them in a lot of really cool ways. So for the nobles, added combat equipment to them. And these are for the actual nobles on the map. But you also get some notables too that are given some civilian equipment. I've just put these in green. It's stuff that you're not really probably going to interact with as much, but it just kind of adds into their options for equipment pieces. For the Sturgian warrior, though, a nice increase to his head armor with the Spang helm with padded cloth. So doubling his head armor there, which is nice. Sturgian militia veteran spearman here, getting a nice change to the leather armor over heavy cloth, which I think actually is a nerf because they do have chainmail on as one of their variants. I've put it as cyan because you're not really ever going to truly interact with it unless you join in with a militia defending. And you might recruit them into your army if you get lucky and free them as prisoners, but it's not too important. Added heavy lamellar vest for the Sturgian prison guard. Overall, the prison guards have gotten quite a bit of a buff with some of their armor pieces being added into the game. The Sturgian soldier here has had its mailed nasal helm removed and had a drop down into its nasal helmet with leather. So 37 head armor on that. Not as good, obviously, as the mailed nasal helmet. We get the same thing here with the Sturgian spearman, though, but swapped. So the spearman gets a better helmet. The soldier has a worse helmet. So, and that fits as far as the tier system goes. So it does make sense. So they just kind of, I guess, balance it out a little bit. For the Variag here, they lose their heavy cavalry helmet and they get the nasal helm over leather. So thus nerfing them. And not really much of a nerf. I guess it's just like you look at the Variag, it's tier 2 or tier 3 or tier 3 or tier 4, because usually the noble line starts at 2. So it's just kind of, I guess, a little more in line with their tier. And it feels like a more natural progression rather than a huge spike of head armor defense. But head armor might be, in my opinion, probably the most important in the game because you can get one-shotted by javelins or arrows, and that kind of mitigates that. The Sturgian horse raider, though, gets a nice little boost. It loses its old bronze scaled vest over Gambison. This is a really, really old piece of armor that came with the game at quote-unquote launch, on early access launch. But they've added some lamellar vests that are quite nice looking, and we can now see that present on the character. Also getting decorated steel lamellar shoulder pieces, which is going to give them even more armor as well. So a very nice swap out here for the horse raiders, which are typically used in the very first portions of your combat engagements or as some kind of flanking piece. So it's nice to see them getting a little bit more staying power. Now for the heroic line breaker here, they get the new decorated hauberk that was added, as well as mail shoulder guards. And they've removed that old bronze scale vest over Gambison as well. So a better body armor piece and a decorated a better shoulder guard, I guess you could say, that gives you more body armor rather than arm armor, which I don't find as useful. For the hardened brigand, though, which is, I believe, I can't remember which one comes first. It's either the horse raider or the brigand, but they're the final 2 tiers of the skirmish javelin cav for Sturgia. But the hardened brigand loses that bronze scaled vest and then gains the heavy lamellar vest, which is nice. They just lose 2 leg armor. It's hardly a nerf, but in keeping with continuity, it is a reduction in leg armor, so I wanted to put it out there. For the Sturgian heavy spear and axemen, they got really nice buffs. So in the past, and I apologize for clearing my chest, I don't even realize I'm doing it, it's called allergies. So in the past, the spearmen just could not perform very well. And then the axemen performed very well. And they kind of kept trading spots as far as who performed well. So they've swapped around all of their armor pieces and a lot of their weaponry and their shields, giving them better shields or worse shields depending on who it is, and overall making them just a lot more, better on the battlefield. So looking at our Sturgian heavy spearman, heavily lamellar over hauberk now has 50 body, 25 leg, and 15 arm. They're losing the decorated hauberk. So a much higher amount of body armor added in here, a much more leg armor put onto them, and the same amount of arm armor. Then with the actual gloves themselves, you're getting 10 more armor too with the plate reinforced gloves, so a much better fit. You do lose a little bit of armor with the helmet piece, but really not by much at all, right? 48 to 53, that's only a 5-point drop for a substantial increase in everything else. Long Warsword too, which I believe is tier 6, versus the fuller narrow Warsword, which I believe is tier 4 or 5. And same thing with the round shields as well. For the Axemen, they get a nice big change. A lot of the same stuff here. They're losing the nasal helmet and gaining the plated Warlord helmet, so a better headpiece here. And the big thing, they're also gaining, or they're losing their lamellar pauldrons, which is, I actually did not even notice that until right now. But one thing I really like about them is that they're gaining 2 sets of Raider throwing axes and losing the broad-bladed javelins. And honestly, the AI is really good at using throwing weapons, so I'm quite fine with this convention, this change here. And I find that they'll use this a little bit better in combat, especially if they're doing any kind of sieges. Segueing over to the Aserai, we have got some changes, mostly nerfs though. Prison guards, again, have gotten some buffs to their armor pieces. This is pretty unanimous across a lot of the factions. The veteran infantry, unfortunately, are getting a little bit of a nerf here by getting a different shoulder piece with the bronze scale shoulder guards. So a little bit less body, a little bit more arm. Well, 2 and 1 respectively. The Palace Guard are getting scale pauldrons. The Mamluk Cav are getting better helmets. This is being added into their current mix of helmets. The Heavy Cav, though, and this is the same thing that we're going to be seeing with Khuzait, are losing the Step Warbow. Not to be confused with your step bro who gets stuck in the dryer all the time. That would actually be, I think your stepsister. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. But they now have the added recurve bow. This is not a substantial nerf. It is not a substantial nerf. It is still, though, a nerf. You're losing speed, you're losing accuracy, and you're losing damage by a couple points, but it is going to be noticeable if you're using your Mamluk Heavy Cav a ton. You notice that they're just going to be doing a little bit less damage, might take them a little bit longer to kill things. But again, you'll see this swap later when we go to talk to Khuzait. The war bow is better, the recurve bow is not as good, but again, like I said, still, they're both very good bows. All of the archers are getting their helmets removed, and they're instead getting these pointed skull cap over gambesons. So it's a substantial drop in their armor on their head. Oh, this is a pointed skull cap with cloth head wrap, sorry. So from 45 to 30 and from 50 to 52 to 32, that's a 20-point drop right there. That's pretty huge for your Master Archer, which is your top tier archer in the Aserai line. And to be honest, one of the best non-noble archers in the game. So it's unfortunate to have that kind of drop to their head armor. The Aserai Youth, which is the beginning of your noble line for the Aserai, is getting a nice bit of a buff with a long padded robe. Much better body armor here, doubling it with an extra 2 points. Better leg, and just a little bit less as good of a armor on them. The Mamluk regular here is getting a swap to its armor. I read this and I was like, no, this just feels wrong. So a helmet with an open turban gives you 26 armor versus a helmet with turban and coif, which is typically like a piece of chain armor, is not as good. So that's 20 head, or that's 20 head armor versus 26. So Mamluk regulars get better head pieces now. Both of the two-handed weapon units for the Aserai are getting, well, all 3 of them actually are getting a nerf here. So you can see that the helmet on the Axeman is dropping from 45 to 20. And again, I think this is one of those things where they're trying to bring things in line with its tier. The Palace Guard are the absolute best. The Axemen are the first in line. So I think they're trying to just bring that down a notch here. For the Mamluk Guard, we get the helmet with mail, swapping out from the closed steel helmet, so a 7-point drop in head armor, and the Aserai chainmail, which is for the most part pretty much exactly the same as the robe over mail halberd, for the exception of one different point of leg and arm armor. So it's a little bit better there, but it is still worth noting they do have a 7-point drop on their head armor for the Mamluk Guard. The Palace Guard here, a lot of the same stuff. They're no longer going to have the stitched leather over mail, which is probably one of the cooler pieces of armor, to be totally honest. It's dropping by 9 body points, 1 leg armor and 1 arm armor with the Southern decorated chainmail, and the male Cavalier boots from the splint mail boots, they're losing 10 leg armor too. So a pretty substantial drop to their overall stability with the two-handed axe variant for the Aserai. Also, the Vanguard Ferris, though, is getting a nice little buff. It's getting its stitched leather armor over mail replaced with the luxury scale armor, which was just recently added, which gives us 37 body, 23 leg, which is a nice big increase there of 9 points, and then 1 armor reduction down to 13. The light archer is going to get, again, the same thing as we got with the other archers up here. Its helmet's going to be swapped off to a steel cap from the helmet with open turban, so a substantial drop there. But that is our Aserai. Let's move on over to our next kingdom, Khuzait, and they also got quite the nerf here. So a lot of their units, I think it's just a lot of a kind of bringing things in line, as it were. The tribal warriors have had their headpieces substantially knocked down by 5 points. They no longer have fur hoods. They now have nomad fur caps, and their body armor too went from the luxury thick coat, which 6, 3, and 3, to 8 and 3. So no leg armor and 2 less body armor on them. Caravan guards have also had their armor pieces knocked down from 16.52. I'm sorry, from 19.43 to 16.52. So 1 more piece of leg, 1 less arm, but a 3 drop in body. Now the Noble Son, now this is part of your Khuzait Noble line. They no longer have the fur cap. Now they now have a decorated nomad cap, and they lost the thick fur hood. So there is not 2 different headpiece options for the Khuzait Noble. It's just a decorated nomad cap. That's probably a really good way to look at that if you're still confused about this. For the Khuzait Marksman, they are getting better shoulder pieces. So no longer leather pauldrons, and now get this studded neck guard with 17 body, which is cool. The Khan's Guard is now losing the recurve bow and regaining the step war bow. It used to have the step war bow a handful of patches ago. I want to say somewhere in 1.60, or I'm sorry, 1.6x. They changed it from the war bow to the recurve. They're now changing it back from the recurve to the war bow. And it was substantial enough of a change that people noticed the Khan's Guard's ability to do damage was significantly reduced. So I kind of maybe undersold this change to Aserai in the change of this bow, because it is still a couple points of damage you are going to be noticing when you use those units. And lastly, the Torgud, which is part of the Noble line. I think that might be the second or third to last one. I can't remember 100%. They get better one-handed, but they're getting a nerf to their polearm. They're losing 10 points on that. They're losing 50 points to their bow, which is substantial, and they're losing 10 points to riding. So expect the Khuzait Torgud to also not perform in the way that you would want them to. And even though the Khan's Guard is getting a step up in its strength, I overall look at this as a nerf towards Khuzait because of this drop in the Torgud's overall capability, as well as the stability of stuff like the Noble Son and the Tribal Warriors. So you can let me know if you think otherwise, but that's my kind of opinion for Khuzait. Empire, though, getting a lot of spicy buffs, starting off with the Bucellarii. They are overall getting a huge buff to their arm armor. They're losing guarded padded vambraces and gaining plated striped gauntlets, which is nice. Veteran infantrymen are getting the new decorated legionary mail, so they're going to have cool fancy new armor that gives them more leg armor. Also, they're getting ornate legionary scale mail added into their mix. So these are a lot of the newer armors that we've seen added in the last couple months, and it makes the armies, the units, a little bit more dynamic looking, a little bit more updated looking too, which is nice. The Cataphract getting a nerf here. It's losing its lamellar with scale skirt. It's kind of typical look, and legionary padded straps, and it's gaining the Cataphract lamellar armor here. So a 7 drop in body armor, a point increase in leg, and a 2-point drop in arm armor. So a little bit less stability. The word I'm going to keep using for the remainder of this video. Imperial Nobles added to the combat equipment, heavy scale armor, and mail halberd. Again, just if you're using Nobles, you'll notice them now having that as an option. The Manavliaton, though, getting a nice little bit of an increase with the legionary padded straps being removed and the new decorated leather harness with padding being brought onto them. Not too big of a change, but it is 1 more body and 4 more arm armor. Same thing here with the elite Manavliaton, but also they're getting a swap in their headpieces. So they're losing The Spang helm over mail, which is 42 head, gaining the heavy nasal helm over leather, so 6 more head armor, and the new decorated leather harness over mail, so they're getting that as well, which is quite nice. And they're losing those heavy lamellar pauldrons as part of their accoutrement. Now, the Imperial Trained Infantryman is losing a very, very nice headpiece and getting the open padded coif. And the Trained Infantryman, I think, is tier 3 off the top of my head. So I think this is another instance of not trying to make them weaker, but make them more appropriate to their tier, removing these really fancy tier 6 headpieces off of tier 3 units is what I think the overall gist of that is. For Palatine Guard, though, they dropped 20 bow, which is very substantial. 160 was the highest bow skill you could have on a unit outside of the Battanian Fiends. So this brings them now under it, and it puts the Master Archer at 150, which is the highest bow skill. Now, I might have gotten that all wrong because they just recently changed these skills and actually made the Palatine Guard 160, so they brought it back for whatever reason. I don't know if the Palatine were outperforming their intended use case or what it was, but they've dropped their skill back to 140. And then the last kingdom to talk about is Vlandia. The Gallant here is getting just a little bit of reduction in its armor. Overall, a buff for these bros. The pikemen themselves are getting a much better arm or a body piece. So the male hauberk is being swapped off for the rough brigandine, which is 38 body armor, 19 leg, and 19 armor. An overall increase in every single stat, which is very, very nice for the pikemen, especially with the new auto bracing that pikemen will now do. So if they are being charged, they'll drop their pikes, they'll go ahead and defend themselves a little bit better. So this is a very nice addition. The Banner Knight too is getting swapped with its male cavalier boots with male chausses at 22 legs. So 10 more leg pieces there. Let's move into some of the miscellaneous changes across bandits and other things now. Okay, for our minor factions, the Young Wolves and Boar Veterans both got buffs, getting better armory pieces. I don't even know how this word is. I think it's missing an R. I know that. I think it's Cervelier, but they got better Cerveliers here, more armor in the head, and same thing with the Young Wolves getting better chest armor. For the bandits, it got an overall nerf to all of the mountain bandits, and the Legion of Betrayed Hastati lost their Imperial armor, which sucks, and they're getting boarskin leather coats. This is something I actually really don't like that, wrong game, that Tail Worlds has done, is that they've taken these minor factions and taken a lot of fun out of them. The Hastati are an example of one now that are just kind of looking pretty bland. If you remember the Elefthero, Eleftheroi, Elefthero, the Free Peoples as they're called, they used to have a really cool, very unique look in the very beginning of the game, and then a couple patches later they changed them to kind of look like roving Sturgian bandits on horses. So it's taken a lot of the character away from these really cool minor factions and made them kind of look, again, like glorified bandits. So overall, that's kind of the gist here with all of the mountain bandits. They've just become a lot easier by removing these big chest pieces that they've got. Heavy mail shirt with wide belt is now a patched gambesson. Banded leather armor is now fortified mercenary armor. So a bit of a drop in almost everyone's overall, stability. Heavy mail shirt with wide belt dropped down to rough fur armor and padded leather overcoat. And this is maybe just to make bandits less scary. I mean, I don't mess with forest bandits almost ever because it's just like, okay, if I go to do an auto resolve, they'll just completely murk me, and I'm not going to mess around with that. Armor changes, we've got pretty much a lot of the naming conventions changed to the old style of doing things. Somewhere along the line, they decided to say, hey, we're no longer going to call things Highland, Southern, Northern, or Western, stuff like that. We're going to call them Assyrian or Aserai or Battanian, so on and so forth. But looks like they're changing back to the convention of going Highland and Southern and whatnot. So we see that with the new armors that were added. They've renamed the bronze scale shoulder guards to decorated scale shoulder guards. It's just whatever. And male chausses and strapped male chausses are now part of Vlandian culture. But we got the Spang helm with padded cloth, now provides 18 armor, so drop down from 20. And then these two pieces got their armor increased. The fur trimmed short tunic from 2 to 6. Ornate legionary scale now provides 8 leg armor, was 15, and 8 arm armor was 6. And lastly, probably the biggest set of this is going to have a huge effect on Vlandia. Vlandia is really going to benefit from this because all of their crossbowmen are now going to have substantial amounts of range damage here from their bolts. So 2, 4, and 5 for light, regular, and heavy bolts respectively. So let's now jump into the game and take a look at the unit list really quick and just kind of review them with their changes. We'll do this just the same order that we did the actual patch notes. So looking at the Battanians first, we'll take a look at some of the changes here. So obviously the big things that are going to be happening are the Clan Warrior, the Wood Runner, and our veteran Falksman, as well as the Wildling. These are the big changes. So pretty much nothing on this side has changed. It is worth noting here that with the increase in armor, the total aggregate armor on the Clan Warrior is better. So you're more likely to have your tier 2 troops reach to tier 3, which is nice because in the more recent patches, the trained, picked, and oath-sworn of Battania have all gotten substantially better, either through armament or through overall skill selection. So it's nice that you can actually get into those a little bit easier. The Clan Warrior was one that was surprisingly good considering its woodland garments. Don't look like they're very great, but they are decent enough. And on the other side of the tree here, the Wood Runner has gotten these nice new Highland tartans. Again, it is an overall drop in their armor quality here with the tartan toga and the new Highland kilt over tartan trousers. It fits the look a little bit better, so I will say that aesthetically, these guys do look like they're a little bit more in line. The interesting thing though is the Wood Runner will progress down into your two-handed character, right? Your Raider, into your Falksman, into your new veteran Falksman, which has the kilt over plated armor right there, and you got your ridged helm and your woodland fur cape, fur rimmed, whatever the hell they're called. But this is the new armor that they've got, right? The kilt over plated leather. Overall, this line is different, right? It's a up close and personal. You're using your Falk, your Rumphalia, whatever it is, to do a lot of damage. The skirmishers, though, into the veteran skirmisher, into the Wildling, which has gotten its change of boots from the fur boots to the scaled boots. The Wildling is actually really, really good. And it almost, in my opinion, outclasses the Oathsworn, who's got 130, 130, 130. These guys have 140, 120, 130. So they are a really, really good unit, and they've just gotten even better by having more total aggregate armor with their scaled boots. So this is kind of the overall review of Battania. Very strong now with their Wildlings in better position. Their veteran Falksmen are a little bit more, not top heavy, but a little bit more, they're a little bit easier to hold the line. And it's easier to now get into Oathsworn or Horsemen if you so wish. Oh, also, I forgot Fian. We'll go look at them really quick. So this is the change to the Fian. They got this new Highland scale armor over cloth. Again, fits the overall aesthetic, and it is really awesome to see that they're trying to push these these new looks onto the Battanians. The Fian champion overall, though, getting this new rough bearskin versus the other bearskin. What's the armor bearskin? It's a different one overall, but the rough bearskin gives them a little bit more of a armor and adds to that overall cool aesthetic for the Fians here. Moving into Sturgia real quick, we can take a look at the changes to the Sturgian warrior here, and the overall just the soldier, the warrior, and the spearman and how they kind of play out. So the Sturgian warrior has this new Spang helm with padded cloth. You can see he also gets a nice little scarf variation. The soldier, though, had its really good helmet removed, and it has now just this nasal helmet with leather. It's still a solid helmet with 37 armor, and I can see what they did or why they did it is to kind of create a better progression from warrior to soldier to spearman, because the spearman had a weaker helmet, remember? So now it gets this helmet, the mailed nasal helm, which the soldier used to have. So it's a little bit better of a natural progression from 2 to 3 to 4, more head armor, more whatnot, Huskarl's halberd and everything like that. And then we come down into stuff like the heroic linebreaker, which has gotten a change here into the decorated halberd. See that kind of put onto the character as well there. They got something else onto it. Oh yeah, male shoulder guards. These male shoulder guards right here. So just a chainmail beast. Then the heavy spearmen and heavy axemen have had their chest pieces swapped out from the old one, the old lamellar armor, into the new lamellar armor. There is still these old lamellar pauldrons, but you can see overall the character looks a lot better, a little bit cooler on the overall aesthetic here. And we get the heavy round shield, which is a weapon tier 4, hit points 500. This swaps out from the reinforced large round shields. Let's go ahead and go press here. Go here. Go to reinforced large round shield, right? So here is that. Reinforced. I don't know. Okay, so here's our reinforced large round shield. So you're jumping up quite a bit, right? You're getting 70 more hit points. You're getting 2 jump in that weapon tier. So you know that you're getting a much better overall weapon. Here's both of them. They're both the same, exact same. Well, this actually has 490. So I don't know if it was the reinforced large round shield this one or reinforced large round shield this one. So it's, I guess, worth making that distinction. But as you look at the heavy round shield, as we jump back up to that, clearly I don't know how to. It is a much better speed, more hit points. Again, better weapon tier at all as well. And we're looking at a long war sword is the new weapon for our heavy spearmen. That's this one right here. Tier 4, we're looking at just say 69 cut damage and 42 pierce damage. Just of course the speed does factor into this, but just to kind of look at those 2 numbers there. Then looking at the fuller narrow war sword, you can see that the cut and the pierce is not as high. Swing speed is higher on the fuller narrow war sword indeed, but better cut and pierce. In fact, 63 and 42. Yeah, I just had to make sure. I was like, that pierce felt the same. Yeah, it's a little bit different there. So our heavy axemen and our heavy spearmen benefit from that. Our hardened brigand, which comes before the horse raider, I couldn't remember in the previous section. So they get the new, like I said, the new heavy lamellar vest, which is not as good as the bronze scale vest, but very, very marginal difference. But it fits the new look of them, the nice updated overall approach. And the same thing with the horse raiders, who look just way more burly now, way more destructive. And lastly, we'll look at the Varyag. The Varyag is a tier 3. I couldn't remember if it was tier 3 or 4. It is tier 3, so it has the nasal over leather armor helmet, with the Varyag veteran having the closed mail goggled helm. So it fits a natural progression there. So that is our Sturgian breakdown here. Overall, in a lot better position because the warrior soldier spearman progression is good and solid, and the heavy spearmen and heavy axemen actually have way better armaments, both as weapons, shields. We know that these guys now have their throwing weapons too, which is really nice. Way more. They get 6 total shots versus the 4 shots they had before. So an overall nice increase to the long-term longevity of Sturgia. Moving into the Aserai, we get a lot of big changes here with mainly the archers, right? We're going to be looking at these helmets that are not going to be as robust anymore, much lower in armor. I guess you could make the argument it does fit the overall aesthetic of the unit, but it's unfortunate to see that. Also, bow was 160 on the Master Archer. I thought it was 150. It's 160. So they now reign supreme with their bow skill. With the Mamluk regulars and standard cav and then heavy cav, we have a change to all of their accoutrement. Recurve bow on the heavy cav sticks here with the heavy recurve bow on the Mamluk cav, and we also get a change to their helmets as well, right? So these guys get a better helmet at 45 with the Mamluk helmet with mail, giving that nice 45 armor there. And then the regular, I thought, got something. Oh yeah, that's right. It's a better helmet as well. Helmet with an open turban, giving him 6 more helmet armor, which is good because I actually honestly found that the Mamluk regular just couldn't really hold the line that well compared to the other 2 variations. It's progressions, because the progression is a horse archer versus this guy is a cav. This is a cavalry unit. This is a horseman. It's going to charge into combat. So any increased kind of fortitude, constitution on these guys is going to be better, because they just can't really. They don't really have a lot of armor. So giving them something is better than nothing. So they can progress into a much heavier cavalry and horse archer unit in the Mamluk and heavy cav variations of them. So I'm very, very happy that they did that. Not as happy that these guys had like the change to their step recurve bow down from the war bow. So you will notice a drop in their damage output. Now into the Axeman Guard and Palace Guard, we did of course get the changes here to the helmets. This, again, it's a tier 3 unit. It should have 20 head armor versus the 45 it had before. So I'm okay with that kind of nerf, that change, making things kind of fit a little bit more to the continuity. And looking at the Mamluk Guard here too, a lot of the same stuff. We got just stuff kind of brought more in line, and we got the new Aserai chainmail put onto them. So fitting in with the new aesthetics that they get access to, they can now take advantage of it, especially with the Aserai Mamluk Guard, gets the new southern decorated chainmail, but overall does lose some stability because they had this before. 36-14-14, which is now 27-13-13. So they lose quite a bit of body, then a little bit of arm and leg armor. So I think that what you're going to find with Aserai is the archers, their helmets, that swapping is not that big of a deal. It just means, of course, their total armor is not going to be as high. They're still going to do the same amount of damage that they did, so it's going to be fine. It just means that they get charged, they're just going to get melted a little bit quicker. You're going to find that you're going to be able to push into these two units far easier, and you're going to find too that these guys will have a durability that matches their tier, which is good, but it still kind of sucks because I always find that two-handed infantry units don't really get their value because they need to really be used on a flank or with like following you around if you're on foot. If you're trying to have the AI manage them, it never really goes very well. Also, there is the Aserai veteran infantry unit, which did get a little bit of a change here. Its shoulder pieces are on the bronze scale shoulder guards, whereas before they were the lamellar shoulder pieces. So a slight reduction in their body armor. Let me go take a look too at the Aserai Youth, I believe it is. Yeah, so this guy also got a nice little buff though, getting this long padded robe, which substantially helps in pushing him to the next tier because it is a ton more armor for this character. It went from 6 to 14, so like I said, it doubled his body armor, keeping him alive for the long haul. Oh, also we get the Vanguard Ferris here. Has the luxury scale. What? That's a veteran Ferris. That's why I'm like, that doesn't look right. Yeah, there we go. The new luxury scale armor over instead of the stitched leather armor that they had before. So a little bit of an increase, but still kind of fits that new kind of aesthetic that they're taking with all of the units. Taking a look at Khuzait, we get the biggest change in the tribal warriors. They are going to be getting a swap out to their armor from the different fur hoods now to a nomad fur cap and the luxury thick coat, which was 6 body armor, down or up to the studded leather waistcoat, which has 8 body armor. So a big, well, I guess not a huge change, but still a change nonetheless. You'll find that these guys have a little bit less, again, total aggregate armor across their body and head, but they should be not that huge of a change when it comes to breaking into these lines, which is great and all. We didn't get any, well, did we? The Khuzait marksman, that's right. They got the reinforced leather pauldrons were removed and put with the reinforced studded neck guard, right? So that's really the only change as it applies to all of this. It's pretty much a change here and a change here. I think Khuzait will play overall pretty much exactly the same. Your tribal warrior might have or might not have as much capability to push down into its other tiers, but I don't think it's really going to be enough of a change to really be noticeable. Like I said, you are losing 5 points of head armor, but you're gaining 2 points of body armor, and you're going to have the same amount of leg and arm armor as you had before. So it is kind of like a wash, I feel like. I don't think you're overall the look fits a little bit more with the tribal warrior, I would say. So you do have that. Now it's the noble line where things get spicy, right? So we got the Torgud that has been changed. It now has way reduced stat line. So it went from 110 to 100 riding. Of course, 100 bow over 150. So you'll notice these guys are not going to be as good at their current level, but that's okay because they are only tier 4. You still have the Keshig and the new Khan's Guard, which get the step warbow. So they'll be really the pinnacle of horse archer in the game. And I feel like that's kind of the way it should be, right? 220 polearm, 200 riding, And then 260 bow. In fact, is that even better than the Fiend Champion? Yeah, okay. This better be goddamn comparable. So these guys are just going to be absolute trucks. Once again, they've been brought back to their kind of former glory. And just to kind of, I think the Keshrik's got the recurve bow, right? No, that's got the Luke, heavy cav. So just to compare these two for you, the step recurve bow is 89, 62, 94, 78. This is 89, 66, 95, 80. So not a huge change, but it is enough that it will become noticeable if you use these things in mass. So those are our changes for Khuzait. Let's move over to the Empire. For the Empire, we got a nice amount of changes too into some of the things that I think were really lacking. The Bucellarii getting a swap around on their armor. You wouldn't think it's substantial, and it really isn't that substantial when it is small numbers. But when you're going from 9 armor to 22 armor, it's a nice amount of total armor being added onto the unit. So you can see these guys are going to be a lot better in their overall use. They have a step recurve bow. I mean, it's the only horse archer in the Imperial Army. And they actually are pretty good at what they do in the sense that they don't have a ton of bow skill. They have 140, which at tier 5 is not amazing. Again, the step recurve bow is not the war bow, but it's still a solid bow. But they just have a ton of armor with the infantry mail vest, now the plated striped gauntlets, the mail cavalier boots. So they have a nice amount of durability, which is of course always the name of the game when it comes to the Imperial Army. With the Manavliatons, we get the new shoulder pieces on them, the decorated leather harness with padding, and the infantry mail over leather. Same thing with the Elite Manavliaton, which just, dude, look how sick that looks, man. The new decorated leather harness over mail on top of that luxury lamellar vest over leather. And then our trained infantryman has just a different helmet, right? It used to have a heavy nasal helm, which is a really solid helmet. So the Imperial trained infantryman is a little bit more in line with tier 3. It's going to knock down its survivability, of course, because you're losing 32 head armor. But I think overall, it's just kind of probably fit that power scale, that power kind of gradual spike of these versus the infantry. They had pretty much this helmet for the most part. It was, it was exactly this helmet. Now that I look at the notes, it's the exact same helmet. So it fits, I think, the natural progression into the Legionary over here. So I would really like to see the Legionary have a different or better shield. I think the Fortified Kite Shield is just kind of crap for a tier 5 unit. Sure, it's got 530 hit points and 82 speed if we're looking at statistics wise, but it has such a small little defensive little thing. It's so tiny versus these guys still have a pretty small shield, and these guys have a pretty small shield too. Give me a big old heater shield for these bros. So overall, you're not going to notice a huge change, I think, with the Imperial Army moving into your elite infantry. You probably will notice a little bit of survivability issue with the trained infantrymen, but I don't think it'll be absolutely substantial. I think it'll just kind of fit that this tier 3 infantry unit will not be as durable as it was before, but it should be as durable as it should be for a tier 3 unit. With the archery range, we now have the Palatine Guard, who have dropped down to 140 with their step warbow, which was increased a couple patches ago. So they still have just a single stack of bodkin arrows, which is unfortunate. They do now have less bow skill too, so they'll be a slight bit less accurate with those bows. So a pretty good nerf, to be honest, to the Palatine Guard. I'd like to just see them get an additional stack of arrows to kind of counter that. Also, we have the Cataphract, which no longer has the armor it had before, right? We now have the Cataphract lamellar armor, whereas I believe before it had this. No, it did not. It had the one with the skirt, the lamellar with scale skirt, so a 7-point drop in its body armor. But it's just you're not going to notice it. These guys are so like armored head to toe that it's not going to be substantial enough, I don't think, for you to really even notice much, especially with the barding on the the barding should be somewhere around here. Well, the barding on the horse got a lot of barding, so these guys overall are still going to be pretty tanky. I don't think your Nobleland's going to suffer very much. Let's move on to our last one with Vlandia. And really the only change here is the pikemen. They're getting this swap around in their armor to the rough brigandine, which I like a lot more, man. The heavy mail halberd is probably one of the clunkiest looking armor pieces in the game. It just this big huge black chainmail skirt or a gown. I never really liked it very much. I think this is going to make for a much cooler aesthetic look for the Vlandian pikemen. And then for all of the crossbowmen, as we now know, they get these bolts which now do 5 pierce damage for the heavy bolts. These light bolts up here will do 2 pierce damage. So a nice change to the Vlandian range line. You're going to find they're going to perform a lot better against range units. People have already said that in low quantities, archers always prevail over crossbowmen, but in high quantities, crossbowmen prevail over archers. I think that you're going to start to find that gap kind of become less. I think lower amount of crossbowmen are now going to be a little bit more threatening because of that pierce damage added into these. It used to be nothing. Then it was blunt. Now it's pierce. So it's cool to see that. And then with the actual noble line, we've got some changes. The gallant here lost 3 armor. Again, I don't think it's going to be anything you'll really notice at that small number. And then the banner knight itself gets a nice jump up in its defense with the mail chausses here instead of the mail cavalier boots. So your banner knights will overall be a little bit tankier, a little bit more able to survive at that top tier, which is great. But that concludes our video here today, guys, covering everything. I'm going to be doing a full breakout of each one of these unit troop trees once more. I'm trying to wait until we actually get to the launch of the game so that it's like, hey, this is solidified. If things change, it'll be kind of minor from here on out. Things have changed so much since I first did those troop breakdowns. So if you do want to see that, go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.